often get asked if I really like World War II, to which the answer is honestly yes, I enjoy the game, and I know some people might not share the same sentiment, but that all comes down to personal preference. But as for it, I really do enjoy World War II. But the one thing that's kind of not really been eating me up, but sort of just like yearning for more, if I can put it that way, is the sense of content, because over the last year we ended up getting spoiled with 3 games in one single year for Call of Duty, and that's something that whether you're just a regular player or you're a content creator, you probably noticed that every single week there seemingly was something new to talk about, something new to try out in the game across either Black Ops 3, Modern Warfare Remastered, or Infinite Warfare. Now granted, towards the end of that year or so, Modern Warfare Remastered kind of tailed off, because what more can you really do other than add, say, DLC weapons? We had the variety map pack and all that kind of stuff included, but nonetheless, we still ended up for the majority of that year, this past year, having a ton of things added within 3 years and a ton of content to talk about, cover, play around with, whatever it may be in that perspective. But this year, admittedly, though I really do love World War II, at some points in times, I kind of want more. It feels a little stale, if I can put it that way, and I think that might boil down to a couple of different reasons, both personal and from a top-down perspective. Firstly, because, well, we only have 1 game this year. We don't have 3 active titles giving us content. Granted, Infinite Warfare still drops a few things here and there, but it's nothing really substantial that will garner a ton of community hype, but also maybe because of the World War II aesthetic. You can't do as much of what we've seen in recent years, because if you want to keep it even remotely realistic and to the plausible sense of what World War II is like, you can't have super fancy, flashy camos or anything like that, and as a result, we haven't seen any DLC camos yet. You might not really think about that, but we've gone 3 months into the life cycle of the game, 25% of that year that it's active, without any single DLC camos. So that's something to keep in mind. But regardless, the World War II theme might limit what we've seen thus far and what we might see in the future. So I want to talk today a little bit about my thoughts on maybe what we end up seeing as a content flow for World War II, how some of this stuff will break down, how things will be incrementally rolled out, whatever it may be. I want to give you guys just a little bit of an open-ended thing here that we can start a conversation about DLC and different content being added in post-launch to World War II. So the first thing I want to talk a little bit about is seasonal events, because this was one that kind of maybe struck me in a sense of surprise, but in a good way. The one thing that I was really kind of going into World War II thinking was that World War II would follow the model very similar to what Modern Warfare Remastered had, with seasonal events specific to, once again, seasons. So we ended up having in Modern Warfare Remastered only 3 different events. We ended up having Christmas Crash, which really wasn't its own event in itself, but then we also had Shamrock and On, we also had Days of Summer. But within World War II, going into it in that same mentality, I thought, well, Winter Siege will be one, then we'll have one maybe in 2 or 3 months to kick off spring and then summer following thereafter. But to my surprise, once again, we ended up having Winter Siege. Then a couple of weeks later, we had the introduction of the Resistance events within World War II. So these sort of events being fast forwarded and more put into motion, that only makes me think that we're going to be seeing even more in the coming future, with maybe say a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks in between each, that it comes down to a sense of normalcy on that base game of what we're used to whenever we end up comparing it to launch. Now, as for whenever I actually went out to talk to some of the developers, I went out to DLC 1's capture event. I talked a little bit about the events in a whole, and even before I had the chance to mention anything of my thoughts on this, the developers were very keen, in which who I talked to, they were really keen on these events. They wanted to see if people would want to do more of these, and from their aspect, it really seemed like they enjoyed them, so I can only hope for even more coming with this. And while we might not say have immediately given to us every single week something brand new, what does give a nice little sense of something coming is that we end up seeing these special modes, DLC weapons, thematic changes, all that stuff that we see with these events that we've already seen within World War II, such as Winter Siege and the Resistance. So I think that's a very cool approach here to this that might keep a little bit of a breath of fresh air in the game, at not necessarily every single moment in the game, but at least something that you won't be without something that is different from the base title for too long. In the sense, though, of things outside of a complete game change and overhaul in terms of thematics and different DLC content drops, some other things that we've been talking about as of recently have been including some things like Domination XL, paint jobs, and the Flak event, to which once again these might have been incrementally rolled out for a reason, to keep things fresh and not given all at one point in time, to which everybody gets it all at once, and then over the, say, next course of a couple of weeks, they start to dwindle dwindle off and not play as much, so these things might be strategically placed to be added in at different points in times, but still the flak event is something that is being tested here and there, and the paint jobs are something that we've been told are going to be coming within Resistance. Same with Domination XL, it's been included in all these sorts of different mentions and posts about the Resistance event, so maybe say even tying into that topic of Resistance discussion and the event discussion, maybe that is something that we can look forward to as well. But as for other content things, not necessarily just brand new DLC weapons, weapon variants are even a thing of discussion that we can bring into the fold with this discussion. We end up having a ton of things that are unreleased, and if you guys missed it, yesterday we detailed every single secret variant and hidden from regular menu UI view, all these weapon variants that you can see if you end up doing some sort of process, but that you can't actually end up obtaining, and then some, of course, yes, you can obtain, but are once again just hidden from regular menu UI view. But all these things that might be unreleased, we can see those being dispersed at some point in time because a lot of them are absolutely beautiful, man. Like, some of these I would do anything for to have, and I would create class setups just to use them, even though they're weapons that I might not normally use. And when you take a look at some of how out there the designs are in the sense of them being awesome and not just standard and default, these are ones that were worked on for a reason, so why withhold them? Maybe we add them in at a later point in time, and that is one thing that I think might even happen, because a couple of days ago, or I guess a couple of weeks ago at this point in time, we ended up having a tweet from Condry in which there was a question asked if we could ever see the Duck Soup 2 coming to World War II to Condry, to which Condry ended up saying that we'd have to take it up with Captain Butcher. So seemingly tying into maybe another DLC event, not probably Resistance because we've already seen a lot of what is being put on the table with this event already 3 weeks in, but seemingly another DLC event, and maybe that ties in with even the pistol that we ended up seeing teased with Twitch Prime that we have yet to see at the very moment. But still, once again, circling back to the idea of more events happening. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, and probably the last thing because I don't want to ramble too much on the sense of things that could be coming, one thing though that I think is a massive way that we can end up expanding our horizons in terms of content and not necessarily having to add in corny things or anything like that we've seen in previous years and take away from the World War II aesthetic. That being divisions though, because I think this is something that we still have a lot of room to play around with within World War II, and it's something that's been talked about from a developmental standpoint already. That said, whenever we ended up seeing the Resistance division launch within World War II, honestly, I wasn't expecting it. I knew that there was another division in the code called Cavalry, to which we still have yet to see, and we'll talk about that in a second, but Resistance kind of took me by surprise. But as for the DLC itself, well, it opens up the avenue for more DLC divisions, to which I'm all for. 5 at launch can seem kind of limiting, and opening up more can offer more chances for some things that were either cut from earlier builds of the game or brand new things to make their way into the game to adjust certain metas to offer different playstyles to players and all things like that, that while we might not have specific DLC, we have more things that offer different ways to play that keep players engaged throughout the rest of the year. While pistol play in the Resistance itself may be in the minority, it is something that's cool that we can end up seeing a division catering to that certain skill set and the process of allowing players to experiment with other things than they may normally otherwise not use. And also, I love the fact that we end up having the classic in the franchise in the way of the tactical knife brought up to speed and being something that is added into World War II. Now, as for other things, well, we might see other elements included that we might not necessarily even think about. For example, we already have SMG play with Airborne, we have Rifle play with Infantry, we have Shotgun play with Expeditionary, we have LMG with Armored, and we have Sniper play with Mountain alongside with what Resistance just offered in the sense of pistol play being covered. But perhaps we can end up seeing more custom tailored divisions for, say, launchers, melees, score streak adjustments, explosive adjustments, other things that are very minute details you might not otherwise think about. Maybe you can end up having these things that players could also often include elsewhere but not dedicate full classes around that build. Maybe that's something that's addressed with this. And once again, the Cavalry division is still something that's in there, so we may see at least one more division coming as DLC, or I guess free to all, not necessarily even downloadable content at that, but in the sense that it is brand new, introduced at that. And Condry & Co. even took to Twitter and Reddit and other places to say that they're open to some of these things and adjusting playstyles by offering new divisions. So maybe with the lack of in-game DLC camos and other specific things that players have been used to the last few years, maybe we end up seeing that compensated by things on a larger horizon and a grander scale being introduced by different elements of the game itself being adjusted and added in with more things to include on how you play. So when I come back to my first statement about the game at times feeling stale, once again, it's completely out of the realms of its own control in the sense that we don't have as much given on every single weekly basis, but I think that there is still a lot that can keep the game fresh, and the future of DLC within World War II still looks very promising and something that I'm very much so looking forward to. So really, I guess this whole thing was just to discuss with you guys my thoughts on where we can end up seeing World War II go and what sort of DLC we might end up having along the way. Whether that be via weapons, new divisions, new events, whatever it may be, I think this year still has a lot of promise within it, and it's just a matter of hopefully not being burnt out on the game that we know right now and coming back with enough of a stable flow of content that it keeps everything relative and fresh. So I think that's where we're gonna wrap it up though, and I wanna get your thoughts and feedback here on this because really I just wanna share my thoughts on what I think of World War II at the very moment and where we can end up leading into with keeping the game fresh and of course new for that entire year. Something that I predicted even before the game launched would be kind of tough just because going from 3 games to 1, that's something that's always going to be a challenge. But I want to get your thoughts and feedback here on this. Do you guys think that these are adequate ways that we can end up keeping the game fresh and new and keeping DLC and everything rolling out to players over the next coming weeks, months, and for the rest of the life cycle of World War II? Or do you think it's something that might not ever work? Honestly, I don't think there really is a right or wrong answer. I just want to get your thoughts and feedback and start a little bit of a discussion here at this one. So that said, let me get your thoughts. Drop them down there in the comment section down below. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding World War II and everything else that may come along with that. Best tips, tricks, news, class setups, all that good stuff. If it interests you, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys want to follow me over on Twitter, that's the best place to get connected from outside of YouTube. I practically live on Twitter. So if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, link is down there in the description below. And finally, if you guys want to follow me over on Instagram, trying to get a little bit more active over there as well. So if you guys want to follow me on that avenue, feel free to. Link is also in the description. But that said, hopefully you guys had a fantastic day. Thanks so much for watching. Mine is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.